Bugs don't get the love that other animals do, but they essentially support all life on the planet. To avoid total ecological collapse, we need to learn to live with them, help them thrive, and invite them back into our lives again. When we think about a healthy ecosystem, we think about the trees and the charismatic megafauna that live there. But we don't think about the bugs. Why is that? Insects form the basis for the food web. Insects outnumber all other forms of animal life by a lot. More than half of all living things and 90% of all animals are insects. The rest of us, we're just a rounding error. Sure, there's a lot of them, but why do they matter? The biologist E.O. Wilson called insects the little things that run the world. That's because they provide all kinds of ecological services like pollinating, decomposing organic matter, and even keeping agricultural pests in check. But here's why insects are crucial. All life on Earth is supported by the energy from the sun. And plants are essentially the only thing on the planet that can convert that energy into life. And bugs convert plants into fats and proteins. Fats and proteins that support the rest of the food web. To quote E.O. Wilson again, if insects were to vanish, the environment would collapse into chaos. He estimated humans would only last a few months without them. Birds, for example, are entirely dependent on caterpillars to raise their offspring. We might think that birds can survive off of seeds alone since that's what we put in our bird feeders, but that's not the case. Adult birds can eat seeds, but 90% of bird species require caterpillars to raise their young. Baby birds are adapted to eat caterpillars, soft sacks of energy that provide the necessary fats and proteins and carotenoids that they need to grow. Baby birds can eat some other insects and spiders, but studies have shown that diets lacking in caterpillars result in less healthy and successful bird broods. And yet we continue to treat this vital part of the food web like a nuisance. We spray our homes and streets with toxic chemicals that kill bugs or get taken up the food chain. We reduce the number of plants for them to eat, and we destroy the leaves where they incubate by constantly mowing and blowing our natural spaces. Even people who are very concerned about biodiversity seem to turn a blind eye to insects and their plight. I'm a member of a local Facebook group for gardeners in my neighborhood, and there's a constant stream of posts with a picture of a bug saying, "What do I do about this?" Our first reaction is that a bug is bad and we need to find a way to exterminate it. Like all things natural, it's best to know the name of something before we decide whether anything needs doing at all. Like in our video about plant blindness, most people are unable to name a single bug outside of the generic name like caterpillar or dragonfly. Get out your trusty iNaturalist app, snap a photo, and identify the buggo. Unless it's an invasive species or an insect that's very destructive to your vegetables, the best move is nothing. Think wu wei. Do not do. Let the bugs be. If you see some bite marks on your leaves of your plants, that's a good sign. It means there's life in your garden. Plants produce 30% additional leaves than they need because they expect to get chomped by little bugs. It's all part of the process. Many of us have heard stories about people who have bought milkweed for the monarchs, but then when the bugs eat the plant, they get worried about what to do to save their milkweed. Honey, let the caterpillars eat. The milkweed will take care of itself. You might think, okay, I planted some roses, I see some bugs flying around. The process works, right? Not so fast, buddy. Even though North America is famous for homes surrounded by green lawns, trees, and shrubberies, the vast majority of these plants aren't native. But what does that have to do with animal biodiversity? Everything. Plants are smart. Since they can't move, they have to develop protections from predators that work when they're standing still. So they use chemical defense systems. These chemicals make it difficult or even deadly for insects to eat their leaves. But over time, insects developed adaptations to chemicals from certain plants. The most famous of these is the monarch caterpillar. Milkweed is a toxic plant, believe it or not. It contains toxic cardiac glycosides. Huh? But the monarch developed a resistance to this toxicity with the trade-off that now it can only eat milkweed. Without the milkweed, the monarch ceases to exist. But the same process happened with zebra swallowtails with pawpaws, or skippers with prairie grasses, and thousands of other moths and butterflies and insects. In fact, 90% of all insects are specialists, meaning they can only eat plants from a certain genera. The same is true about pollinators. Sure, honeybees can gather pollen from many different species, but the 4,000 native bee species in the US are adapted to gather pollen from specific plants, like goldenrod, asters, or blueberries. These butterflies and bees cannot exist without their host plants, which means that in the majority of American neighborhoods, these bugs have nowhere to eat. All of the plants that are in these yards are exotic, and our local bugs don't have the adaptations to eat them. And when there are no moths or caterpillars to feed their babies, there are less and less birds and other forms of life. Effectively, by planting non-native plants, we have shut off the transfer of energy in the food web. The energy stops with your gardenias. No offense. And most of these plants host more than just caterpillars. Milkweeds host aphids and a variety of other interesting bugs that create a rich ecosystem that supports lizards and frogs and other larger bugs. I'm sure some of you thought, aren't aphids bad? Maybe not great if left unchecked on your vegetable patch, but not for wild plants. They're an important part of the ecosystem. They're like the shrimp of your yard, the krill of the patio, food for lots of other species, and like all bugs, they're something we need to learn to appreciate, not hate. Doug Tallamy breaks this down in his book, Nature's Best Hope, where he argues for suburbanites to bring nature into their yards and help create essentially a massive nature preserve, what he calls homegrown national park. He focuses a lot on birds in this book, since birds are very charismatic and bugs are not so much. His argument is that by planting native plants, we're growing birds. But even our perception of bugs is changing with the help of Tallamy and awesome caterpillar scientist David Wagner. He has several books that are one of a kind in compiling lists of specific caterpillars full of beautiful images. Insects are incredibly diverse and fascinating, and we should take the time to appreciate them. Now, some of you might say, there's no way I'm getting rid of my petunias. No one's telling you to get rid of your petunias. Most yards have plenty of space for more biodiversity. Tallamy has a number that at least 60% of a yard's plants should be native. Right now in most American yards, that number is closer to 0, so I'm happy with any improvement. Planting natives doesn't mean you have to have a wild yard like us, as there are lots of beautiful native plants that people already appreciate, like oak trees, maple trees, blueberry bushes, or purple cone flowers. What can you do to increase the buggos in your yard? First off, stop spraying chemicals. That's for bugs or for weeds. Just keep it out of your yard. Secondly, find yourself a reputable plant vendor. It's hard to know what plants are actually native. The National Wildlife Federation's Plant Finder can help you identify which plants host the most caterpillars in your region. We've included a link below. You can also use the Garden for Wildlife website to have plants native to your region shipped to your door. My mom got us all milkweed plants delivered for Easter. Maybe you can start a new tradition as well. Plant more than you think. Double down. Planting native seeds are cheaper than buying live plants. Use a combination. Leave the leaves. Never use a leaf blower. You can use the leaves as mulch around the base of your trees and bushes. All kinds of insects make their home in the leaf piles, and it's where caterpillars build their cocoons. So we need to keep these things in place and not destroy them. Consider a non-motorized lawnmower to avoid destroying the insects that live in your grass. Mow high and also mow less often. This will also allow other plants the chance to grow in among the grass. Turn the lights off. Bugs basically wear themselves out at night looking at lights when instead they should be eating or banging. Give them a rest and put your outdoor lights on a motion sensor. Insects are incredibly resilient and their populations can increase very rapidly. They're very small, so we can host a lot of them on small portions of land. Each of us can take a step to add more native plants and thus more insects to our gardens, our community centers, our churches, or our businesses. Get started now and invite life back into your neighborhood for the sake of everything on the planet. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to learn more about similar topics, support us by clicking like, subscribe, and hit the bell button. Thanks, y'all.